The next set of question is with respect to reliability. Remember, this is an important factor because you are putting your hard-earned money in it, and financial security is something very important in this particular sector or domain. Hence, we are trying to capture what is the efficiency or with respect to reliability of the bank which you are currently attached, and also we are trying to ask whether in the past have they experienced any mistakes or not with respect to the service they have been using. So here 5 would indicate that there are no mistakes, and 1 would indicate yes, there were often mistakes which were made. Then the next set of question is with respect to products. So we are trying to ask whether credit card or debit card product do they find the range of products with respect to credit card and debit card sufficient to what they are looking for, or it is something different than what they were expecting. So again, from in the range of 5 to 1, where 5 would indicate that it has met expectations, or the range of products were as per what the customer desired, and 1 indicating that the range of products with respect to credit card or debit card were not as per desired. The next two set of question is with respect to loyalty programs and loyalty redemption. So how is the loyalty program rated by the respondent with respect to the bank service he or she is using? So remember, loyalty programs are an important marketing promotion activities or marketing per se, which the bank do because it helps in retaining the customer, and it also helps in getting customer transact as frequent as possible, and keep a share of the bank in the mind of the customer using this program. So we are trying to ask what is the how the respondent would rate the program, and how the respondent would rate the redemption policy or rewards which he or she received with respect to the service which they are using. The next set of question is with respect to website. So there are a couple of banks which would provide net banking facility where we have captured the response of the respondent with respect to whether the website is accessible all the time, how is the navigation facility of this website, how is the effectiveness of the website. So if a customer is going to net banking, it becomes a very integral part of his or her daily activity, that all these factors should be as per the desired mark, or in short, it should rate on a scale of 1 to 5, it should rate 5, because the net banking facility is something which is becoming very common, and everyone wants that we should get rid of visiting the physical outlet or branch in order to make some daily transactions or facilities which could be done online or from the website itself. So with respect to this, we are trying to capture what is the net banking facility which the bank currently provides them, and how would they rate them with respect to the website or net banking facility. The next set of question is with respect to mobile banking. So if you see, again with respect to mobile banking, we are trying to ask how is the accessibility, how is the ease of using this mobile banking facility, how much it is reliable. So we are again looking at some services where we could transact sitting from our home or from our workplace, where we need not go to the actual bank and do the transaction or use some of their facilities. So this is also an important factor, because if we see the age group currently of the respondent, it is somewhere between 25 to 35. So these factors become an integral part of the service or the customer service index which would be derived. This would help in getting a good score with respect to the customer service index of each bank with which they have a relationship with. So till now we saw the set of factors with respect to what is the actual service. So the different parameters were rated on the actual service which is being currently served by the banks. However, now in the next set of questions, we are trying to ask what is the expectation of each of these respondents with respect to each of the parameters for the banks of which they have a relationship with. So if you see the first expectation with respect to branch location, so from the next set of parameters, we are trying to ask whether does this parameter have an important does this variable influence the customer in deciding whether I should go for a particular bank to use a particular service or not. So if I am a respondent, I would say that for me, branch location doesn't really matter, because so I would probably rate this as 1, because for me, I carry out most of my transactions online or using net banking or mobile banking. So for me, my expectation of branch location would be low, or say it would be 1. However, for customers who are not very tech savvy or would like to carry most of their transactions still in the traditional form, that is, carry out the transaction in the while visiting the physical branch, they would obviously want that the location of the branch should be rated 5 or 4, where it should be easily accessible. In a similar way, we have different set of parameters where we are asking what is the expectation of those respondents with respect to courteousness of the bank, ease of doing business, time, whether the bank should offer timely service or not, what is the expectation, what is the expectation with respect to loyalty program, what is their expectation with respect to internet banking. So again, coming back to the example which I took of myself, I would obviously rate here as 5 because I would want most of my transaction to be taken place through internet banking or mobile banking. So I would rate here 5 and 5, and then we are trying to ask what is the expectation with respect to home banking. So again, this all the variables would depend on the type of the respondent, and also it would depend whether the respondent would like to carry out the transaction online or use the traditional form of visiting the banks and then carrying out basic transaction or using some of the service. Then the last set of questions where we are trying to ask is the type, which is the bank private or not, and based on that private, that is, we would select, the respondent would select private if the relationship with the bank or the bank is in private sector, and select PSU, that is public sector unit, if the bank is public sector, in the public sector unit. In the next set of analysis, what we are trying to do is we are trying to capture the expectation and perception gap for each of these variables for each of the banks which they have currently, for the range of bank for which we have got the response from the respondents. So remember, we told that we have around 200 respondents in this survey. If you see now, we have different banks listed here, and on the row side of on the first row we have different variables, or sorry, on the first row we have perception and expectation for each of the parameter for which we have gathered from the respondent. So if you see, the expectation and perception with respect to convenience or branch location is calculated for Axis Bank, Bank of Baroda. So this figure has been derived using taking the average of all the Axis Bank customers. Similarly, for expectation also, this figure has been arrived by taking the average of whatever customer respondent or has answered in the responses sheet which we saw earlier. So based on that, we have calculated the expectation perception gap, where we are trying to calculate expectation minus perception. Now, if the expectation minus perception is positive, that indicates that the customer is expecting more with respect to branch location or convenience, and the current service which is being delivered or which is being perceived by the customer is somewhere lower from the expectation side. So if I had to look it from the bank perspective, I would probably look at the positive values rather than looking at the negative values, where I would say that, okay, if my expectation perception gap is positive, that means the expectation is more. However, the kind of service which I'm delivering, or if even if I'm delivering services up to the mark, the services are not well perceived or not well received by the customer. So why is the case? So I would look at the positive figures where I see that the expectation perception gap is positive. Obviously, there are some few banks which are having a negative. That means the perception is way higher from the expectation. That means they're delivering services which is way higher from the customers what they're expecting. So I would obviously again look at this figure as well. So from Citibank perspective, suppose I want to look at this, I will probably then look at a branch location which would result in less operational cost for me, because for me, I'm still hitting a target or still exceeding the target of 3.67 by, because my convenience or the perception of is 3.76. So I would probably look into this figure and see if I can minimize some cost or play around with these numbers and help in devising strategy going forward. So in the similar way, for different banks, we have calculated for each parameter. For different banks, we have taken the average of each. Say for courteousness, again the average of perception was taken from all the respondents, and the expectation perception gap was calculated. So if you see, for all the variables we have done the similar thing, where we are trying to capture the expectation perception gap, and then probably using these figures we would then decide, like, for each bank which parameter is causing the maximum gap, or for which parameter the bank is scoring on a higher side, or the service delivered or the service perceived is higher than what is expected. So with respect to each variable, as you see, we have calculated the expectation perception gap. Say for with respect to website and response is internet banking, mobile banking response is mobile banking, home banking, and so on. And in the last row, if you see, we have taken the average of all this. So if you see for average of banking sector, if we want to look at, if I had to ask a question like for the banking sector overall or the responses which we have received, if I had to answer question something like on the courteousness or on the convenience side, what is the expectation perception gap? So if I see it is positive, so overall the banks are still lagging or are still lagging in delivering or delivering to the service which the customer is expecting. In a similar way, if we see for courteousness, it is still positive. For ease of business, it is still positive. That means the expectation is higher from what is currently being delivered or what is currently being pursued by the customer. Again, for timely service reliability, we have the perception expectation perception gap as positive. So in this way, we see that for all the parameters, if we had to take the overall banking sector average or overall banking sector answer, it is that the expectations are still higher. However, they are not very higher from the perception or the service with the or the kind of service with the current which banks are currently providing to their customers.